Good morning. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer hearing for June 7th, 2023. My name is Milka Toledo, and I will be conducting the hearing as hearing officer. The Planning Hearing Officer meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable, Channel 6, and AT&T UVerse, Channel 99. Meetings are also streamlined live in high definition on the city's website, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public and comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. We have two cases involving discretionary permit applications. There are two variance application requests. One is located at 221 North Glendale Avenue, variance case number PVAR 000654-2022, and 318 Brockmont Drive, variance case number PVAR 1923322. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will read the description of the application request. I will read the reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. The case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be connected in by telephone, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be connected by phone to give comments, again clearly stating both name and address within a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to testimonies given by preceding speakers within a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and then the case taken under submission. Findings. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the required findings set forth in the Glendale Municipal Code, then the project can either be approved or approved with conditions. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Decision. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online, the Planning Division's website. Appeals. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal must contact the case planner to obtain forms and information regarding the appeal process and submittal. Public notice. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices which were mailed to property owners, occupants located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. Speaker card. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speaker forms which have been provided by the front door and submit it to our planning staff. The form looks like this. If you would like to also inform everyone, I would like to also inform everyone that the official proceedings of the Planning Hearing Officer's hearing are being televised live and may be viewed online on the city's website. So the first case we have on the agenda is the variance request for property located at 221 North Glendale Avenue. The project description is a standards variance request for 2 new signs and proposed for an existing retail liquor store. Business name is Total Wine. The variance requests for signage include a second wall sign along the front elevation of the ground floor tenant space where the zoning code allows a maximum of 1 wall sign on the building that directly faces a parking area, and to allow an additional wall sign on the parking structure parapet located at the driveway entrance along North Glendale Avenue, where the zoning code requires a wall sign to be attached to the occupancy building wall. And the project is located in the Community Commercial Zone, High District 2, described as lots 1 through 4, parcel map GLN number 1598. I will ask our case planner for this case, Vista Izzati, to go over her report, recommended findings and suggested conditions, and also go over any comments received by other departments. Thank you, Ms. Izzati.
Thank you, Ms. Toledo, and good morning. So this is for the variance for 221 North Glendale Avenue. As you noted, the variance request is to allow 2 signs that don't meet code. One is a second wall sign where only 1 is allowed at the entry, and then to allow a wall sign on a parking structure parapet at the driveway entrance along North Glendale Avenue. The existing project site is developed with a 2-story multi-tenant commercial shopping center that features retail and food service uses. The current tenant, Total Wine, has been operating at this location since March 2023. The tenant space was originally occupied in 2001 by a Long's Drugs retail store, but it has remained vacant for over a decade. The surrounding neighborhood features multifamily and commercial uses, and directly to the south of the site is City Hall, where we are now. The existing 18,000 square foot tenant space is located on the lower level of the commercial complex on the portion along Glendale Avenue. The business is oriented towards the interior parking garage, and it is not visible from the street. The site has 2 levels of parking for the commercial tenants with multiple entry points for vehicular access. The upper level has driveway entrances along East California and the northerly portion of Glendale Avenue, and those are shown with the yellow arrows on the slide. The lower level driveway entrances are along Wilson and the southerly portion of Glendale Avenue, and those entrances are shown with blue arrows. Given the change in grade along Glendale Avenue and the sloped driveway that leads to the lower garage level, the project site is considered semi-subterranean. This slide illustrates the location of the existing and proposed signage for the tenant. The variance requests are only for sign A and sign B as noted on the slide. These signs are necessary to provide the tenant with better visibility, where their current location in the semi-subterranean portion of the site puts them at a disadvantage from the other tenants. This slide illustrates the location and design of the second tenant wall sign being proposed. It will provide better visibility for customers parking in the northerly portion of the lower level parking area, as well as those that are coming down the escalator and stairs from the upper level. The city's sign regulations are intended to help preclude sign clutter. Given the length of the building facade at over 150 feet and the large separation between the two signs, the intent of this regulation is still being met. Oops. Oh no. There we go. And then this slide illustrates the location, this sign illustrates the location and design of the sign proposed above the driveway entrance. Unlike the other businesses in the center and throughout the city, Total Wine does not have any frontage along the street, only towards the interior parking lot area, and this can become confusing for patrons who may or may not know where to go or how to get to the store. This sign will help provide better visibility for customers traveling along Glendale Avenue, as it provides a visual cue as to the location of the business, as well as how to get to the parking area, and will help customers avoid confusion. As detailed in the staff report, all of the findings required for a variance can be met. The strict application of the rules would result in practical difficulties and unnecessary hardship for the business because it is at a disadvantage based on its location with less visibility than the other tenants in the same center. Overall, the new signage will be integrated with the shopping center, and the requests are consistent with the intent of signage regulations because they do enhance the appearance of the community, preclude sign clutter, create a more attractive business climate, and they also reduce obstructions that could lead to safety hazards. The variance request will not be materially detrimental to the public. There were similar variance requests approved for this facility in 1997 for the other tenant in this lower level area, which is Ralph's. Those signs have been installed for decades now, and they have not caused any aesthetic or safety issues. Finally, the Public Works Traffic Division has reviewed the request, and they did not cite any concerns that the site's signs would contribute to obstructions that it could impact automobile and pedestrian safety. Staff has not received any comments from the public, and we are recommending approval of the variance with conditions subject to the draft findings and draft conditions attached to the staff report. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is also here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Zati. I don't have any questions at this time. I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward. Gary Potts, state your name and address for the record, please, and please go over your findings and give us a little bit of background on your request.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Gary Potts. I'm the owner of Professional Permits. My address is 58171 Dragonfly Court in Osceola, Indiana. I'm here today on behalf of Total Wine, who is the tenant, as well as the property owner, Glendale Fashion Associates, LLC. The request is for two signs, one being a wall sign that would be installed in the lower level at the front entrance. That is an internally illuminated sign. It is identical in design to the one that is there currently. We're asking for that one to provide additional store identification and assist people locating the store and the parking garage. The second sign is the one on the parapet next to the Ralph sign. That is also internally illuminated, but it is only push-through letters. So it's an aluminum cabinet with push-through letters, so the only thing at night that's going to illuminate are the letters and the logo. We did that just so that it doesn't provide any additional light spillage out into the property. However, it will give us brand identification when it is warranted by the weather or the nighttime conditions. So we are, I did read through Vista's report, and I don't have any concerns about the conditions or anything like that, and the findings were fine. Our findings of fact are similar to hers, but I'll go ahead and state those for the record. How will the strict application of the provisions of any such ordinance result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance? Strict application will limit the wayfinding of the public to the store, as it's located inside the lower level of a parking garage, and the store's visibility is severely limited. These signs will allow for better traffic flow for those seeking the store. What exceptional circumstances or conditions apply to the property involved or intended use of the development of the property that do not generally apply to the other property in the same zone or neighborhood? The store is located inside the lower level of a parking garage. The main entrance is also located inside that parking garage, thus reducing and basically eliminating any store visibility that we have. So that would be our exception. That is not standard to a retail location. Why would the granting of the variance not be detrimental to the public welfare? The channel letters will not be seen by the public unless they're inside the parking garage. And the cabinet sign on the parapet is only for brand identification and wayfinding. And again, we've also reduced the amount of light output from that sign by only illuminating the letters themselves, even though it's a cabinet sign. Why will the granting of the variance be in keeping with the objectives of the ordinance? The ordinance allows for variances to be granted when unusual circumstances are present that would warrant relief from the standards of the ordinance. The granting of this variance will be in keeping with these objectives. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. I do have some questions. It seems like you probably answered some also in your presentation, but don't mind the redundancy.
No problem.
Just to be clear, the proposed size of the wall sign, or I should say the parapet sign, on the Glendale Avenue
On
frontage.
the parapet
Yes.
next to Ralph's?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you just tell me the size again real quick?
I can't. Let me get, that's another document.
And is it sort of similar in size to the Ralph sign that's currently there that is going to be moved over?
Let me get out of this. Thing here. Sorry.
That's okay.
Technology sometimes gets you.
We
when you
can
wanna-
move on to the next
No, I
question.
got it. It's right here.
Okay.
All right, so the cabinet sign. It's 32 square feet, the entire cabinet, so it's 4 by 8, which is
Okay.
pretty much similar to the
Is
Ralph's,
it
just a
similar
different
to the
design.
Ralph's? Okay. Okay, good. So proportionally is what I'm getting at.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And that one in particular is on a raceway. The one inside and facing the parking area are individual channel letters, is it?
They are individual channel letters, correct.
So the one on the raceway will be internally lit, so it
Yes,
doesn't,
it's on a cabinet.
Right.
It's in a cabinet, and that's the face of the cabinet is aluminum,
no animated signs are proposed.
is all static images.
Have you had a chance to review the existing sign program associated with the center?
Yes.
And I know that's a separate
We
process.
do have to amend that, I understand that, yes.
Yes, okay. I noticed that there are some signs already there, but now we're keeping, it sounds like you're keeping
Everything that's
those,
there
but
is
you're
gonna
just
stay,
going
correct.
to add to that. So I noticed there's the ground sign facing Wilson, and you also have one wall sign that's in the interior of the, I should say, facing the parking area there now.
Yes.
And then there's one facing Glendale Avenue. However, the one on the parapet is not there yet.
Correct.
And the number of signs, I'm assuming your team has kind of discussed this, and this is the adequate number of signs for the business to be successfully advertised?
Correct, yes.
Okay, good. Have you had a chance to review some of the conditions that are being
did. I did read
recommended by the
through.
case planner? And do you agree with those conditions? Okay, would you like to add anything else for the record?
No, I don't think so. I appreciate your time.
Okay, I don't have any further questions at this time. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this case? Okay, I don't see any.
There are no callers.
No callers? Okay. So with that, I will take the case under submission, okay, and issue a rendered decision in writing, and it will be mailed to the applicant. Thank you for your time. And we will, with that, move on to the next case on the agenda. The next case on the agenda is 318 Brockmont Drive. It's a variance request to construct a new 2,305 square foot, two-story single-family residence with an attached two-car garage. A previous house located on the site was damaged by fire, subsequently demolished down to the foundation. The applicant is requesting 4 variances to allow the reconstruction of the residence. The variances include standards variance to allow development of a residence on a lot less than 7,500 square feet. Standards variance to allow a driveway length of 1 foot 3 inches, setback variance to allow a 1 foot 3 inch street front setback, and setback variance to allow a 6 foot 6 inch and 3 foot 8 inch interior setbacks in the R1R restricted residential zone, floor area ratio District 2, described as Lot 5, Block 6, tract number 8280. And the project is exempt from CEQA review under Class 3, new construction or conversion of a small structure pursuant to Section 15303 of the state CEQA guidelines, because the project involves the construction of a new single-family house. I will turn it over to the case planner, Mr. Kiesel, and please go over any comments. I do see that I have one comment from the fire division. I guess I could, are you going to go over it in your presentation?
Sure, I can just briefly go over it. They're actually,
Very-
there's one from building and safety and one from fire.
Okay,
Yeah.
if you don't mind going through those comments,
Yeah, that's fine.
seems
That's
like
fine.
it's pretty general.
Yeah, I can go through them
Okay.
when we get there.
Okay, sounds
So-
good, thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Toledo. As you mentioned, the applicant is requesting approval to construct a new 2,305 square foot single-family residence to be located at 318 Brockmont. The residence will be located on a 5,880 square foot lot on the south side of Brockmont between Park Ridge Drive and Cumberland Road. The subject lot is in the R1R FAR District 2 zone. And also, as you mentioned, there was a previous house on the site. It was damaged by fire and subsequently in 2011 demolished down to the foundation. Construction of what is being proposed requires 4 variance requests, which include a standard variance to allow a new single-family. Yes,
Are you going to have a PowerPoint presentation?
I am.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was just going to finish this first and then.
My apologies.
That's all right. I'll just put up the screen first. The first variance is standard variance to allow a new single-family residence to be constructed on a lot less than 7,500 square feet. As I mentioned before, the existing lot is 5,880 square feet. The second variance is to allow a single-family residence with less than an 18-foot driveway depth. The proposed driveway will be 1 foot 3 inches in depth. The third variance is a setback variance to allow a new single-family house to have less than the minimum 15-foot street front setback. The proposed single-family house will have a 1 foot 3 inch setback, street front setback. And then finally, a setback variance to allow a new single-family house to have less than the minimum 10-foot interior setback. The proposed single-family house will have a 6 foot 6 inch setback and a 3 foot 8 inch interior setback. Staff believes that all 4 findings can be met for each of the variances and recommends approval. So this was just a summary slide of what they're requesting. The location map, the subject site is sort of shaded in gray. This is Brockmont here.
It's not on the screen.
Oh, okay, sorry.
There we go.
Is that it? Okay. Sorry about that. So, the subject site is highlighted in gray. This is Brockmont here. Yeah. And it's between Cumberland and Park Ridge. The site plan, Brockmont Drive, the street is on the top of the slide. The proposed residence is sort of shown, outlined in gray. There is a pool immediately south of that, and then the rest of the yard. First floor floor plan. This is actually not really visible from the street because of the topography of the lot. So you can't really see this from Brockmont. This is the second floor. This is the floor you can see from the street. And you'll see the the two-car garage on the left part of the screen, and then the remainder of the house. Front elevation, the east side elevation, the rear elevation, and the west elevation. And then some photos of the site. This is looking from Brockmont, sort of southeast. This is also from Brockmont, looking sort of southwest. This slide, you can see the covered up pool pretty closely. It's the wooden cover. Some additional slides of the yard. And then staff recommendation. So as I mentioned before, staff believes all the four findings can be made for each of the variances and recommends approval of the application with conditions. And then let me just before I let me finish my presentation, and then I'll go over the other department comments. So just briefly, with regard to the first finding, that strict application of the provisions of the minimum lot size and driveway depth standards would result in practical difficulties and unnecessary hardship. This lot has been previously developed with a single-family house, and the proposed residence will be located in roughly the same location as the previous house. Additionally, when the house was constructed in the 50s, that original house, as well as the house next door, were granted variances for reduced street front and interior setbacks. That initial house was developed generally consistent with those variances.
That was in 1959.
Correct.
Okay.
And then also, the applicant is largely maintaining the existing swimming pool, which constrains the street front and interior setbacks. There are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved that do not generally apply to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. The subject site has remained in the same state since the original house was demolished as a result of the fire. And this condition, sort of the dilapidated state of the site, as well as the applicant's desire to build the residence and generally within the footprint of the previous residence, warrants making this finding. The granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property improvements, because the subject site is zoned for single-family residence, at one point contained a single-family residence, and the proposed house is generally utilizing the building pad of the proposed, or the previous residence. And then finally, the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. Very similarly, because the property is zoned for single-family use, and a single-family house existed on the site in generally the same location. So my findings are more in-depth than the staff report. This is just really a quick overview. We did get 2 comments back from other city departments. Building and safety comments were fairly routine, requesting permits be obtained from a variety of other city divisions and departments, and requiring that the permits to eventually construct the house be consistent or be compliant with a number of different kinds of building codes. So fairly routine comments. Fire department comments largely consisted of the site is located in a high fire hazard area, and so their comments were generally to address its location in that zone. So they had some comments on landscaping, that it be consistent with hillside design guidelines, fuel modification zone. They had requirements on exterior doors and windows with a fire resistant rating. Decking needs to be constructed of various materials. And I'm not seeing the one other one that I wanted to highlight. Give me a second. There was also an exiting requirement, and for whatever reason, I'm not seeing it now. But basically, as I said, the fire department comments were largely to address the fact that the site is in a high fire hazard.
And the applicant has copies of
Yes.
these comments?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Kiesel, can we just briefly go over the chronology, just to be clear? So the house is built in 1959, and there are variances associated, including setback variances at that time.
Correct.
The house underwent fire damage, and then a
Fire damage in 2010.
2010, and then a demo permit was issued in approximately 2011 or something like that.
Yes.
Okay. Were there any other variance requests or attempts to move forward with new construction on that site?
Between then and now, there was one in, I believe, 2016.
Okay.
I believe it was 2016.
December, I see something. Application requesting the same variances as
Yeah.
requested today
Yeah.
was approved in December 2016,
Right.
but no house was constructed as a result of the variance approvals. So
They just
2
didn't
years
implement
went
the
by,
variance.
they never
They just never
executed that
right,
decision
right.
and secured building permits.
Yeah.
But just for the public's understanding, the same variances that are being requested today with this proposal are the same variances that were approved in 2016.
Correct.
Okay. So really, aside from the design, and,
The design is
changed.
different, has
Right.
changed.
but again, just to establish the variance requests
Right.
for the setbacks, for the front, for the interior, And
Lot size,
the reduced lot size is the same?
yeah.
Okay.
The house, obviously the design is a little different. The house is slightly lower in height. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I will open the public portion of the hearing for this case. Let's have the applicant come forward. George Avetian?
Avetian, yes.
Good morning, Mr. Avetian. Please state your name and address for the record and give us a little background and go over your 4 findings.
You got it. Good morning, everyone. My name is George Avetian. I'm with Avitect, and the address is 7240 North Havenhurst Place in Van Nuys, California. Not to continuously reiterate what Mr. Kiesel said, but just to bring back reference of in regards to how we've continuously worked on this. Previously, this was with a different planner. It was with Mr. Collins, and he had assisted us along with the neighbors to be able to work with them to make the modifications that we did in reference to the original variance. The original variance was approved, like Mr. Kiesel said, and during that process, so the variance was approved in 2016. My client purchased the property in mid-2019. And that's when we started going through and attempting to actually execute the previously approved variance. So because that timeline had lapsed, we started applying for a new variance and going back and forth with the city. And that's when those changes were made regarding the height and everything else. As far as, like we said, the building is pretty much going to be in the same location as it was previously approved and what was previously existing on site had the same front yard setback, but it had a different east side yard interior setback. That interior east side setback, I believe, was originally roughly the same as the west at about 3 foot 9 inches. So we've increased that, and I think that was a little bit of back and forth with the fire department between 2019 and 2020. And like we said, with that change, we did reduce the height, and that came directly as a comment from what we understood from the one of the neighbors, and we just went ahead and, of course, wanted to make sure that everybody was happy. As soon as, just to give the reassurance to all of the neighbors and, of course, staff and the city of Glendale, we will be building this as soon as possible, as soon as all of the approvals are done. We do understand that as far as having ruins sitting there is not very appealing to anyone, whether it's the neighbors or the city itself. But we also want to be cautious and in regards to the comment that I believe Mr. Kiesel said I can't remember it exactly, but if you could refresh my memory about the difficulty of getting into the garage or something like that, about the setback as far as traffic is concerned. Was there some type of comment like that? Maybe I understood you wrong.
No,
No?
not that I,
No, okay. No, just to say that it is a very low-density neighborhood, and there's really not much traffic that goes up and down Brookmont. In reference to the modification of the pool, we are modifying to fit within the current guidelines of the city. So we are reducing it from, we are extending and increasing the side yard setback from the east side, and in reference to moving it a little bit further away from the house, just to have proper circulation egress as well. That's also on the drawings. And in reference to the 4 variances, whatever we're proposing was pretty much there from the 1950s. It's not really very different. I think that's about it. We just want to make sure that we go ahead and finish the structure and have my client have a house for his family and be able to actually get through it. The overall hardship has been very difficult in the sense of a financial hardship to kind of maintain and go through the entire pandemic and not be able to make much progress with it, unfortunately. But the overall goal of this was so that my client built his dream house for his family. Okay, and I'm here for any additional
I do
questions
have
and
some
answers.
questions.
Okay.
So in terms of the exceptional circumstances associated with your project, can you just kind of highlight what some of those exceptional characteristics are for your site in particular
Well,
that warrants these variances?
the position of the overall existing pool, the slope of the property, the egress and ingress of the property, the overall area in which we have to be able to maintain a decent design for a comparable sized home for the neighborhood is also another one. But overall, this is a pretty standard design within the area as far as coming in at the level that we're coming in, and then, of course, going down for a downslope lot. It is the way in which the topography sits right now, we are attempting to mimic exactly, or as close to as we can, to what was originally there before the fire happened. The circumstances do reflect the way in which the house has to kind of sit on the site. So the way that I look at certain properties is, I think when you start designing, you actually allow the site to tell you where and how the house is going to sit.
Right, so the lot in the site constraints dictate placement of
Exactly.
the development.
Correct.
Do you by chance know the average size home in the area? I know that the subject is proposing 2,305 square feet. Do you know roughly?
They
the-
range anywhere from what I remember, as little as 1,400 square feet to as over 4,000 square feet.
Okay. Do you happen to know more or less what the average setback, and specifically the front setback for surrounding homes, similar to the request?
They do vary. We know that the property to the west has a similar setback. The property to the east, who is one of the neighbors here, has more of a setback than we are proposing. But again, the entire design is to basically create the least amount of disturbance to the overall existing site. And the average setback throughout the rest of the street does vary. I'm just trying to remember from going back and forth.
And on the
But-
south, where the subject, on the side that the subject is located is the south side, so those, when I was driving around, seemed to be closer to
Exactly.
the street.
Yeah, if we're talking about Brookmont, yes, all along Brookmont, it does vary, and there are houses that are extremely close, anywhere from like as little as the same that we're proposing, I think, just around a foot to 2 feet, to 5 feet to 10 feet. In some areas, like the neighbors, it does extend to about, I think it was like 11 feet in certain areas. But yeah, majority of the houses in that neighborhood, because of the overall general topography and its location geographically, they do have very limited front yard setbacks.
Are there any protected oak trees on the site? I noticed one from a distance, but I wasn't based on what I'm seeing in the site plan, it may be on the neighbor's side towards the rear, so there's no oaks on the subject.
Correct.
Okay. So obviously, the development's not going to compromise
No.
the roots of that oak, okay.
No, not at all.
Obviously, the design will be reviewed by the design review board, so this request today is just to establish the variances that have been outlined earlier. The reduced
And previously
lot
approved.
size, exactly, and the reduced setbacks.
Correct.
My last question for now is, are you aware if there are any other properties in the neighborhood that have been developed recently, and when I say recent, since the last variance approval for this case, that are developed on lots less than 7,500 square feet?
I do recall one.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly the address of it. I don't think it was within the proximity of the 500 or 1,000 feet that we were talking about, but I can definitely get back to you with that.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Okay. I don't have any other questions at the moment. If I do, and you will have more time for rebuttal after the other speakers.
Awesome. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you. Guillaume Lemoine.
Yes, good morning, Ms. Dolita.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for listening to us.
Can you just state your name and address
Ms.
for the record?
Guillaume Lemoine, I live on 300 Brockmont, which is next door to the applicant,
Thank you.
on the east side of it.
Yes.
In December or November 2016, we met with the hearing officer at the time, and all the neighbors supported the setback according to various historical facts and needs, especially from the fire department. We should had problems during the actual fire, to fight the fire because there was no entry on the side big enough for allowing them to get in. That said, I just want to make sure that we understand the 1 foot 3 inches setback for the driveway is the closest the corner of a garage will be from the property line. It's not an overall 1 foot 3 inches all over the length of the garage.
So if we can turn to that sheet, I don't mean to pause, but just to kind of go to your point.
Right. I want to make sure that it's clear.
From what
it's
I'm
not,
seeing, and please, we'll have the case planner just confirm, it appears that the 1 foot 3 inch setback is located, I would say, on the northeast corner of the garage. That's the closest point to the property line, not the entire frontage, but we will confirm that, and the applicant during his rebuttal can confirm that for the record.
Okay.
And maybe we can kind of go through.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not coming up on the screen
range?
right now.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, the plan show that, but I just want to make sure then in terms of
When
discussion
the
that we're
applicant
talking about.
comes back to the podium, I'll ask the question, like, what is at different points, the setback, I guess the range, that being the narrowest point.
Okay, I have about 6 points to make regarding other things. Like, for instance, there's at the pool deck, there's an overhang, which is over the setback, the actual setback right now. So I just want to know if they are going to move the wall of the pool back, of the deck pool, or they're going to remove the overhang, because the removal of the overhang was requested in October or November 2016, and I didn't see any confirmation on that. I had an oral confirmation from the hearing officer at the time, but not on paper. We can see that as well. I want to make sure also they talk about ingress, egress of the property. They want to make sure that there's one entrance, a service entrance from the side to the deck, which could be used by the fire department.
There appears to be some stairs along the east side. Is that what you're referring to? Like you want to confirm that those stairs are going to be maintained, which provide circulation to the rear? Okay.
Question about the sewer. The old sewer was connected from below on the west side of the pool deck, below the pool deck, and crossing the property below that. We would like to have the sewer to be unique and discharged in the street on Brockmont rather than using the other people's properties.
Okay, that would be something that would need to be dealt with Public Works Engineering, and the applicant can respond to that, but that would not be something that, that's within my purview.
Understand, but we talk about design as well at some point. So the other thing on the plan, we don't see any AC system, and we want to know where those things are located because they cannot be located in setbacks, from what I understand. The other thing about the design, I mean, I don't want to pass judgment on the design right now because I believe we are going to have a
Right,
DRB session.
let's not discuss design today because that's not within
The
my
applicant
purview.
mentioned it as well. So I would like to respond to his question. In the old house, it was there, the garage was higher and will be higher than the living space. There were 2 stairs down to the living space. And the current applicant is ignoring those 2 steps down to go to a lower level, which was the level of the old house. Meaning at the end of on the east side, the house will look bigger than it used to be, by 2 to 3 feet taller. So I think it will be interesting to look at if we can have an articulation between the garage and the living space, which was originally there. And that will affect the height, proposed height of the front door. And I would suggest to, instead of showing the front door by the height, to show it by the material used, rather than increasing the height. On the other side, on the south side, and the neighbor south side sent me an email, he's not able to come here, but I believe he has the same question, and I know they've been doing some work on the finishing of that facade. There was a lot of glass originally. There's still a lot of glass. Some glass panels are 6 feet tall to cover around parapet and black. And I would like to make sure that this glass is a bird-proof, bird crash-proof as well, which it's regulation in certain states and cities now, because we have a lot of birds in the area. And a lot of glass can reflect below as well and impact their living quality. Briefly on one more thing on the design, I see there's some fake windows on my side. I don't need a fake window on my side. And I think that's about, and the oak tree, yeah, you mentioned there is an oak tree next door which has roots on his property, and I would like to see mitigation as well during construction of the oak tree. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave, I do have a comment. You mentioned about the AC. Typically, mechanical equipment would be shown on plans submitted to the Design Review Board. In terms of locations, there are exceptions to having mechanical equipment within the interior setback as long as it's screened and enclosed. The case planner wanted to add to that. But that would be something that would be reviewed during the Design Review Board process. And a lot of the comments that you've articulated here today as it relates to design, again, would be something that would have to be deferred to the Design Review Board.
Yeah, and none of the neighbors
The
are.
applicant's here, so he can
Yeah, none of the
He's
neighbors
taking
is
notes.
opposed to construction.
And that's the point I wanted to ask you. Then, are there any concerns regarding the variances that are being requested today?
No, I think there was one lone voice about property, but that person hasn't said anything yet, so.
Okay,
But we all, I think I can speak for the people I speak to, and they all support something built there.
so you support having the site developed with
Yeah,
a
and we
new
encourage
single-family
the
house?
architect to work with us if he has any questions. So far, he hasn't. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speakers, Marta and Sheldon Phillips. My questions were answered, thank you. Okay. Gary Nave? Did you want to come and say that?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Toledo. I'm Gary Nave. I live at 321 Brockmont Drive. I want to show support for the granting of the variances. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn Nave? No comment. Okay. So I take it you're in support of the variance?
Yes, my only concern was the height. That's,
Okay, Mr. Avetisian, you have a couple minutes to rebuttal, and I know this is not a design review board forum, but you've heard some of the comments. So moving forward in the future with the design, I'm assuming you would take those into account as well as part of the design of the project. But in response to some of the comments here today, would you
Yes.
respond to them?
So in regards to the side yard, yes, we have increased the side yard from the previous design. The steps will be maintained. It is a requirement for the fire department to be able to get around the site.
We'll continue the dialogue here so that we don't
Just
miss
so
the mic.
It is a requirement. That is something that we do have to get approval of during the building approval process. The driveway is longer, and you did bring that up, Mr. Kiesel, and you'll see, I don't know if I could walk up to it or just kind of point to it from here, but
The
that-
issue is the mics, because if
Oh, okay.
we're not, yeah, we need to, you can point from a distance, but we'll have to keep you right here where the mic is.
Because of the curve of the street and the facade of the garage, it would be the easternmost portion of the driveway is the less deep, and then as the street curves, the westernmost part of the driveway, I'm gonna estimate is 5 feet in depth. But that's just because the relationship of the curved street to the location of the garage.
And just to confirm, the easternmost corner where the house is adjacent to those steps, what is the setback there? Do we
That
know?
setback at the street is more than the 1 foot, or I think it's the 1 foot 3 inch.
Correct.
I would say it's roughly 3 feet.
Correct.
Okay. So approximate range is from 1 foot 3 inches to 5 feet? as it curves.
Yeah, I would say the driveway depth, that's an accurate
Okay.
approximation of the depth of the
depth.
driveway.
Okay,
The other comment was in regards to the overhang removal from the rear pool deck. That was listed, from what I remember, as part of the original variance conditions, and we're not opposed to it being removed. I think it could definitely benefit the site because of its aged overall In regards to the sewer, I believe that's going to be a Public Works comment, and we're going to have to deal with Public Works on that. If I remember correctly, we've actually gone and reviewed over the title documents. The title documents do list certain easements for sewer that are in that rear portion of the property. And we will do whatever Public Works requires from us to make sure that the sewer is connected properly. The AC is shown on the plan. The condensing unit is actually at the southwest corner of the building, outside of the current proposed easement. That is the condensing unit. The actual forced air unit is going to be located in the crawl space below the garage. And I don't know if we actually showed that, but that's what we've proposed on our plans. As far as in regards to the height was reduced 2 feet from the original design. Yes, we wanted to make sure that the space was friendly to the client's family and reducing the number of steps inside the house to where you go up and down steps. We wanted to make sure that when they parked in the garage, that if they were going to be using a wheelchair, they could at least get to that first level without having to go up and down steps. That was the focus around that. But the overall design did actually reduce by 2 feet. As far as the overall look of the design, a lot of that is directly a result of going back and forth and designing it and redesigning it and trying to make it look somewhat presentable. And I think we did a decent job of getting it to that point with all the requirements and with all the back and forth that we did. As far as the windows that are proposed to be fake on the on the east side of the building, I think we were also proposing to have the same on the west side of the building. I think they bring a certain aesthetic to the overall design rather than having a huge, large blank wall. But we're not opposed to having them completely removed. I just think it'll create a less desirable look over the building, even though it's not viewed all that directly. The east side will be seen as you're driving past it. The west side will not, because of the way in which the properties are currently set. So, but that's that. If that comes back as a comment, we'll definitely deal with that at the time. And as far as the tree, yes, we do have to, if the building department does require us to go back in and get an arborist involved, get a tree report, have the mitigation, make sure that it's fully protected, of course, we're gonna do that.
Real quick, Mr. Kiesel, have we received any comments yet from our arborist? The city arborist on this project?
We have not received any.
So when we do, we'll forward you the comments.
Of course. Okay. Did you guys have any other questions for me at this point?
Going back to the overhang question that came up, would any of the concerns raised here today as it relates to some of the design points, would they impact the variances that are being requested?
In reference to that overhang,
For example, doesn't seem to be.
it's concrete,
Okay.
so it would somewhat make it a bit more difficult to remove rather than like having a wood deck. But overall, if that's a requirement, then of course we have to address it. But that deck, it does get closer to the property line, and that is looking towards the east side. So, like we said, if that's one of the requirements, I don't think we're opposed to it.
Were you not part of the scope? It did not involve removal of the pool deck that's currently there?
Removing the entire pool deck?
Just a
don't-
question.
I think majority of everything that we've done, well, not majority, but everything in reference to the south side of the property has been in relation to that pool. We've protected it,
Okay.
we've done everything that we can to make sure that we can maintain it. Yes, we are gonna modify it.
So it's just working with the existing condition and just working off of that and improving.
Exactly.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you for going and responding to some of the concerns raised here today and comments. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Do we have any phone calls?
We do not.
We do not. And one last thing before we close the session. Did you review the suggested conditions that were outlined in the staff report or draft findings and conditions?
Yes, we have. We do need to go kind of thoroughly through them to make sure that that we're all on the same page, basically.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to ask. Are you opposed to any of them
Is,
or any concerns regarding any of those suggested conditions?
well, in relation to the overall timeline, and I greatly, greatly appreciate Mr. Kiesel's expediting of this entire process, I would like a little bit of time to kind of review it with my client a bit further, if that's possible, because we haven't really had a time to
Okay.
sit down and review everything. I mean, we've gone over it just as a quick overview, but
Yeah, just for clarity's sake, once a decision letter goes out, if it's approved and there are conditions with it,
can I
if
have,
you don't want to, if you don't like one of those conditions, your avenue is to appeal the decision.
okay.
So,
Is it possible for me to request a 5-minute recess and just do that real quick?
I'm sorry, what?
Can we
I didn't
request a 5-minute recess to just kind of go over it one more time?
We can do that.
Yeah.
We'll do a 5-minute recess just for the applicant. Unless, do you have a copy of those right now?
I can get a copy.
Okay.
Does the applicant
Not
have,
necessarily need to have a recess if the applicant,
it was an attachment. It was the
I can
first
go over
attachment.
them
Why,
with you.
yeah, why don't we, if you want to take a couple minutes, maybe that's the best thing to do, and then, the hearing officer and you, if you have questions, can talk about that. The other thing is there may be other conditions that are placed on the project once a decision letter, if in fact it's approved. These are just draft conditions. There may be other things that Ms. Toledo also puts on.
No, that's totally understandable.
So, one second, let me
Can I
down.
show these to you real quick?
It's the findings were the first exhibit, and those
Exhibit 1.
had the conditions.
So I'll go over them with you.
Okay.
The
Do you have a copy of that?
Well, I thought I did.
Okay.
The
let me-
first-
Let's look. Hold on a second, sorry.
So this is everything that I received. So
That's the hearing.
that's the hearing. This is city clerk.
Yeah,
So that's the guidelines.
Nope.
That's the actual variance,
Okay, so let me quickly get Exhibit 1.
It's fine, and then I'll go over it. You can come over here, Ms. Stravitisi, and I will. The first suggested condition was that it's very standard that the development shall be in substantial accord with the plan submitted, with the application presented at the hearing, except for any modifications as may be required to meet specific code standards or other conditions stipulated herein to satisfy to the satisfaction of the planning hearing officer hearing. The second draft condition was that, again, it's a general condition that all necessary permits, building, fire engineering, grading, et cetera, shall be obtained from the Building and Safety Division, and all construction shall be in compliance with the Glendale Building Code and all other applicable regulations.
Those are standard.
Condition 3 is pretty standard, that the premises shall be made available and accessible to any authorized city personnel, building, fire, police, neighborhood services, planning, etc., for inspection to ascertain that all conditions of approval of this variance are complied with. The 4th condition is, again, standard for building and safety, that additional or other building code requirements or specific code requirements, for example, California Green Code, Building Code, et cetera, will be required upon submittal of plans for building plan check and permit. The 5th condition is that design review approval shall be obtained prior to the issuance of a building permit. So again, that requires you to go through the design review board process.
All standard.
Number 6 is standard, but more overseen by Public Works, because it has to do with the right-of-way, that if any buildings, sidewalks, curbs, or gutter, fencing, or landscaped areas, et cetera, adjacent to the site are damaged during the course of construction on the public or private property, the damage shall be repaired to the satisfaction of the planning hearing officer for private property and the director of Public Works for public property. Number 7, that any proposed exterior lighting shall be directed onto the driveways, walkways, and parking areas within the development and away from adjacent properties and the public right-of-way to the satisfaction of the planning hearing officer. And number 8, that the development shall comply with the conditions of approval as specified in the building and safety conditions dated May 31st, 2023, which you have a copy of. Number 9 is that the development shall use the same footprint of the existing building pad, with the exception of the east side where additional setback is necessary to comply with fire safety access regulations or requirements.
Okay.
And number 10, that a 6-foot 6-inch interior setback on the east side is permitted. However, if greater setback is determined necessary by the fire department for fire access, then the setback shall be increased to accommodate fire department access requirements. And the last condition, number 11, that a 3-foot 8-inch interior setback is permitted on the west side of the property. No eaves shall encroach upon this area.
Correct. There was one thing that I did want to discuss, and I think me and Roger kind of did discuss it over the phone, Mr. Kiesel. The overall placement of the building is pretty much within the footprint as we discussed, except for the southeast corner. So I don't know if that needs to be necessarily documented on here, but the location in which where we start to get close to the pool in that area is outside of the original proposed, original home that burnt down, but it is within the limits of the previously approved variance, if that makes any sense.
Can we go to the site plan really quick, and if you can point that out?
So right
It's
there.
this area
right-
of the house.
Right in that area. So when you actually look at the aerial photographs, you'll see that that area next to the pool does not have any footings of any sort. So that area is outside of the original perimeter of the building.
Okay. And that, the second part of that sentence reads, with the exception of the east side where additional setback is necessary to comply with fire safety access requirements.
Correct. So we did actually increase the side yard, but we also went a bit further south and increased the footprint in compensation, if you want to say, but overall, just to be able to have a decent design for the home.
Okay, so it sounds like you're using more of the similar footprint on or about this,
Correct.
on or about the same.
Yeah, not exact. No, we're not staying within the exact footprint, and we're 90% there, if that makes any
Okay.
sense.
Okay, I'll take that into consideration. It seems like the word same
Oh,
would be more.
maybe.
Maybe substitute with similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as, that was my main concern, and that's what we had discussed previously, so I just wanted to make sure that was
So that's condition
a
number 9.
condition number 9, correct.
Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to this?
No, I'm good.
The neighbor had a quick comment. I will have him come up and briefly make his comment and then allow the applicant, if necessary, to come back and provide a response.
Okay.
Guillaume?
Thank you very much. Again, Guillaume Lemoine at 300 Brockmont, next door. To your comment, if the deck, the pool deck is going to be changed, obviously the footprint of the house proposed is encroaching and will demolish that pool deck, that concrete pool deck. So yes, it's been altered. So I want to make sure that the overhang which is on the property line and overlook to my pool will be removed part of that work and resurfacing the deck, basically.
Well, thank you. If the applicant can respond to the comment.
Yeah, as I mentioned, that was, I don't think it's exactly on the property line, but as far as if that's a concern of the neighbors for privacy, we're more than willing to actually remove that portion of the deck facing the east side.
How much of that portion are we,
It's about 3 feet.
3 feet?
Yeah, maybe three, somewhere between 3 to 4 feet. If I remember correctly, it was almost very close to 3 feet. And I believe the fence is actually where the property line is, and you could see the survey, and the survey does indicate the exact location of the property line. But we, of course, we want to be respectful of our neighbors and remove whatever they believe to be imposing.
However, is that still part of the, would that compromise, is that consistent with the variance that's for the interior setback that's being requested on that side? It doesn't appear to be.
No.
Okay, so that wouldn't impact, that sounds more of a design-related
Correct.
concern that could be dealt with down the line as you're preparing the architectural
Landscape and
plat
hardscape.
packet for the design review board. Okay. Okay, well, thank you again for responding to the comments, my questions, and the comments here today.
Okay, thank you for your
Again,
time.
we don't have any callers. Okay. With that, I will close the public portion of the hearing, and I will take this case under submission. We don't have any other speakers wishing to speak, and we have no callers. So with that, this hearing is now officially closed. I will render a decision in writing. It's 10:53 in the morning. Thank you all for your participation and coming out this morning. Today is June 7th, 2023. The hearing is closed.